And I'm doing a little bit of an operation here. I'm opening the program by turning around my YouTube video camera because it's facing the wrong way, which makes it very difficult for people to actually see what's going on. Some people may not even bother, but we have a handful of people who tune in and they actually look at the YouTube videos of this program that sometimes we don't post everything, but sometimes we post some of them. And the camera was flipped around because of Dr. Tripp's visit here yesterday, and we try to focus on the guests generally when they're in studio. 7 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. If you're just waking up and you haven't heard, during the course of the night, 6 armored vehicles came rolling out of the darkness and surrounded the Malheur Wildlife Refuge Visitor Center. I guess you'd call it. There's a complex of buildings there at the center that have been used by the government for many, many years in its efforts to fish and wildlife for the bird watchers and the other people who come and spend some time there and walk through the area. And there's a small museum. There have been, because if you didn't know this, after the shooting of Lavoy Finicum a couple of weeks ago, he was shot and killed on his way to a peaceful public meeting. After that happened, 4 people remained at the refuge, and they refused to leave, even with Ammon Bundy saying to them, hey guys, it's time to go now. They have refused to go. So during the night, the FBI moved in and surrounded the facility. And I'm told at the moment, this is what we know because I've been listening to a live stream for a good part of the morning that's actually coming out from the center. You can literally hear the FBI negotiator from the outside, and then you can hear the 4 people who are inside responding. And the FBI, according to what the people even on the inside have said, they're not leveling their firearms in the direction of the 4. So hopefully there's a peaceful resolution within the hour. It's expected. It'll be 9 o'clock our time, 8 o'clock in Oregon. Within the hour, it's expected that Reverend Franklin Graham and Michelle Fiore, who is a legislator from Nevada, will arrive, and that the 4 who are left still at the refuge are going to surrender, along with Fiore and Graham there to be the intermediaries. Now, Michelle Fiore, if you don't know much about her, liberals can't stand the woman because her Christmas card this past year, if you didn't see it, was was she and her family all lined up, all holding firearms, wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. Michelle Fiore, though, also has some other assets, too, that get the attention of a great many people. And the American left, which always screams sexism about just anything that comes up involving women, likes to refer to her as a bimbo. That's because she has, she's rather top-heavy. And so the American left is, if it's a conservative woman, it's okay to say all of those things about them. But she is actually one of the most powerful legislators in the state of Nevada, and she has been on the side of these folks for a very, very long time, but she's hoping that she can broker a peaceful solution. And Franklin Graham coming along, too, as well, may well do that. Now, this is a clip from the overnight discussion going on the live stream coming from inside the refuge, where you have those 4 people holed up, with one of them saying it's 2 of them are from Idaho, we should point out, but one of them saying it does look as if it's going to end in a peaceful manner.
Michelle, this is Sean.
Hi, Sean.
I talked with Bill, the FBI guy, and we've agreed to meet with you and Reverend Graham in the morning, probably 8 o'clock, and we're going to turn ourselves in.
So there you go. Now, Sean is one of the Idahoans who happens to be there, occupying, as they say in the media, occupying the refuge. Most people would say they're just camping out, and that's all they've ever been doing. I have to tell you, and I think if you've been listening to the program the last 6 weeks, you know that I have been offering a lot of support to these people. Maybe not necessarily these 4, because once they were left there, what's the big deal? It's 4 guys sitting around a campfire, and well, there were probably, a dozen of them sitting around a campfire before that. I never quite understood the heavy-handed response from the government a couple of weeks ago with Finicum being shot and killed. And you would hope that wouldn't happen. But I was listening to the web stream right up until just about showtime, and I'll tell you what. Bundy, when he ordered these 4 guys out of there, must have had an inkling of what they were all about. Because as much sympathy as I would like to give them, screaming and calling the FBI agents Nazis and MF, you know what MF stands for. I don't have to explain that, right? Mother, fill in the blank. and screaming and taunting them during the whole process probably isn't really a good idea. Back when the hippies were burning down the country in the late 1960s, they kept claiming that whenever they would approach police officers, they were getting clunked in the head with nightsticks. Well, you don't walk up to a police officer, spit in his face, call him a pig and a Nazi and a baby killer, and you just might upset them. On the other hand, if you walk up and you say, "Look, we have a difference of opinion," so the lack of decorum, I guess. They're trying to goad the FBI. They keep screaming, "We're not afraid to die. We're not afraid to die." In other words, it's almost as if they are trying to goad the agents into this. That aspect of all of this tends to bother me just a little bit. You can reach our program today, 736-0300, 736-0300. Also, my email address, bill.colley, that's C-O-L-L-E-Y, two L's in the middle, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And you're up next. You're on the air.
So I don't know if I ever called this program and mentioned this, but right after Lavoy Finicum was killed, murdered, my initial thought was, of all the people to shoot and kill, it seems kind of crazy. But he set himself up by saying he wasn't afraid to die. I also think that's a good thing to tell the people that, hey, we're not afraid to die for this, because then it kind of puts them on edge, knowing that these guys aren't afraid to die. We better watch ourselves. The reason I think they shot Lavoy was because he was the one keeping the peace. And Lavoy Finicum and Bundy I think they were holding things together there, keeping people under control, basically.
Well, in fact, I've heard that about Finicum. He was known as being the calm family man and a calming force at the actual scene as this was going on.
If you follow that to the end, it looks to me like took out the person that's holding it together in order to make the whole group look like a bunch of quacks. It totally fits with everything. They always do this kind of stuff.
Well,
they don't want people to look like sane people. They want you to look crazy so that they can justify their behavior.
These four are not helping themselves then this morning. I thank you much for the telephone call. We have another caller joining us. You're up next. You're on News Radio 1310 KLIX as well as newsradio1310.com. Go ahead.
Listen, after all this, was it worth it? I don't think it was worth it. They should have just protested and not taken that place by arm and illegally trespassed that area. So, I mean, what did it prove? Really, what's the bottom line? Well, you got a dead man, and then Clyde Bundy is arrested because he owed it. Little Bundy was arrested too. What did it prove? What was all this for? Really? Explain that to me.
Well, and I guess I'd offer the same response to the Occupy demonstrations, which seemed to get nowhere, and perhaps even the Tea Party movement, which got nowhere. And a lot of that, and a caller mentioned this the other day, Drudge, there's nothing on Drudge this morning about this whatsoever. It's almost as if once supportive media walked away from it. We don't know why. Were they threatened? What happened? We have another caller with us. You're next. It's 8:15. You're listening to Top Story.
Morning, Bill. The caller 2 callers ago is exactly right. The FBI is trying to. They know these people are on edge. They know they're not the leaders, and they weren't the peaceful ones, and so they're trying to escalate this. That's why Cliven Bundy was arrested last night when he tried to get off the plane. They're trying to make somebody that's really desperate out there do something really stupid, and then everyone can say, "See, we told you so." These people are crazies, and that's why we gotta have stricter gun control and all that. So
when the FBI agents were yelling, and I was listening this morning, they kept saying, "Come on out and surrender. That way you can tell your story." Well, the story isn't being told now.
Hasn't worked so well for for the others.
And so you can't. And that part of it, thank you for the call. I've been critical, of course, of the potty mouth language coming from the guys inside. But the FBI to sit there and say, "Come out and tell your story." Yeah. How gold dang dumb do they think these guys actually happen to be? You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
So
keep it brief. I got other callers.
This has shined a light on the behavior of our government. So they have accomplished something good. It might not have turned out the way we all wanted it to be, but that last caller that hates everybody, he needs to get a clue. It did shine a light on the situation that the government is taking things over. People are starting to realize it, and that shined a light on it. That's what they were supposed to do.
And I'll add something to that, too, if I could. It's 8:16. Bill Colley with you on Top Story 25. Telephone number 736-0300. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It may not be on the Drudge Report, and there'll be some coverage this morning from news. Not much on the Fox News Network. I've got that the TV channel up on the wall here, but at least Fox Radio mentioned it at 8 o'clock this morning. You heard that right here on KLIX. However, I don't believe that media or even anyone in government has any idea just how inflamed the northwest of the United States, or really much of the western United States, because you could drive all the way down to Arizona and you're going to find a lot of sympathy for what has happened here. So it's Oregon, it's parts of Washington, it's Idaho, it's Montana, it's Colorado, it's Utah, it's Wyoming, it's Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico. Yes, there are a lot of people who feel that this thing has gotten just completely out of hand. And I'll tell you what, maybe we're just sitting atop a big powder keg and something could go haywire, and who knows what type of spark it would be. But it would start a rebellion much bigger than any of the old sagebrush rebellions from the 1970s and 1980s. And you say, well, why would you say that? Well, look what happened in New Hampshire the other day. All of the establishment folks who said 6 months ago, well, this is the way things are going to go, and we're going to get more of the same, and the American people want more of the same, and they want slow growth or no growth, and they want an incompetent government, and Iran humiliating us, and so they want to go ahead and have another Bush or another Clinton. And look what happened. Well, as Howard Kurtz, we'll share this a little bit later in the program, the media analyst Howard Kurtz said, and the voters turned around and gave the establishment a middle finger. Those are his words. And I'm not going to even do that for my YouTube video here. I could, but it's not my way. Not even when I'm driving, and sometimes along Blue Lakes Boulevard, you sure feel like it. I'm telling you right now, they don't realize just how peeved people are in this part of the country with what has been happening with this federal attempt to grab land and stamp atop people. There was a writer a couple of weeks ago who said, well, they don't have a leg to stand on. It's public land. Courts have already decided this. Look, ever since the Roosevelt administration in the 1930s, the courts in this country have leaned way left and been very unconstitutional for the most part. And you've got a lot of appointees who have been appointed by Democrats who just simply go along to get along and do all of this. But if you really want to take that thought to its end game, well, then all right, then we should all turn ourselves into the tribal leadership all over the country and become vassals of the tribal states. That's your end game. The argument Finicum made was if you're the first person here and you're using this, that's how it worked is people spread out across this country and formed the United States. There's a legitimate argument to that. And some idea that, well, the prairie dog might be disturbed. Heck, there were 40, 50, 60 million buffalo roaming these lands just a couple hundred years ago. If you had a cattle, aren't disturbing anything. We've got more coming up in just a few minutes. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Ken Menzel from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department is scheduled to join us about 8:30 this morning. That's on the way. Franklin Graham, his appearance there today, you would think would greatly reduce the tensions. However, I don't think there's a lot of people in government who have a great deal of respect for Franklin Graham, especially among the elites who currently run Washington, and well, in media, in government, and in academia. You realize his father, one of the most respected Americans of all time, certainly of my childhood when I was growing up. Billy Graham, he was there was a joke a friend of mine who was a Wesleyan used to say he's the Protestant Pope. Franklin Graham is essentially a chip off the old block. He believes everything his dad believed, and yet he's vilified. His dad was a heroic figure. Graham, who shares the same beliefs that his dad had, he is considered to be some sort of angry curmudgeon who's going to go stuff gay people into closets and then hammer the doors closed. See, that's the problem. When the liberals and homosexuals took over this country, God-fearing people and their leaders were suddenly turned into the bad guys. And that's why you've got people who think it's okay to go around shooting ranchers dead. 8:25, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I do want to remind the folks listening this morning, some people are actually using their firearms for more peaceful purposes. Hunting might be a good example. And if you're among those people, We've been telling you for a long time about high desert meat processing right here in Twin Falls, and if you bring an animal in, that's exactly the animal you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn, he's been doing this for almost 35 years. You can visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook and read reviews of other customers, or give High Desert Meat Processing a call for all of your wild game and domestic processing needs. My telephone number is 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking, nothing shipped out. Specialty meats, pepperoni, jerky, summer sausage, salami, brats, Polish dogs, hot dogs, and much more. USDA approved, and Darren works closely with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949. Here's an email from a friend listening in from the Rupert area this morning. And she writes, does it make you wonder why the federal government is so bent on this particular piece of land? What on earth could be so important about this ranch that begs the question, why did someone have to die over it? There is more to the story, and it's just not being covered. But there is something going on that the public is not aware of. That comes in this morning, as I say, from out in the direction of Rupert. 736-0300 at 7, or call it 826 on our program. We're at 25. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Caller joining us. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, Obama and the trust fund liberals who never had a blue fingernail, are at war with pickup truck Americans, including the coal industry. And I believe the coal industry, we won one with the Supreme Court yesterday.
Yeah, and that's not making Lefty at all happy, but I thank you very much for the telephone call. The courts in the last few days have really been slapping down the Obama White House, whether it be on energy issues or whether it be this whole notion that the EPA could come in and just simply rewrite laws throughout the country. The EPA is not Congress. And the court basically stood up and said, doesn't matter if you're a lifelong bureaucrat who's worked there 35 years, you don't call the shots. That's not how this country works. This very same court as well slapped down Mr. Obama's attempt at backdoor amnesty for people who broke the law coming to this country. So some of these things have actually been good things to see over the last several weeks. Again, we brought this up yesterday, though. Why is it important to ensure that we don't have a President Sanders or Clinton? Because in the next 4 years, you're likely to see 4 or 5 retirements or deaths on that court. And then you're going to see them trying to bring in their fellow Marxist-Leninists to sit in judgment of the rest of us. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. There's people saying that Billy Graham is America's Pope. You know, Billy Graham said in 1952 that Jesus was coming back. In 1950, he said that Jesus would come back. And ever since then, he's been preaching Jesus is coming any minute. What you got is the people believing Jesus is coming, so they sit on their duffs and refuse to use the power that God gave us to stop this evil. And now, look what's happened, what it's come to. This is all the false teaching of the modern church.
And I've heard you guys before, and I've read up on all of that, and I think you're full of baloney. Can I just say that to you today? Respect most people's religious beliefs, but I think you're full of crap, to be honest with you. And when he says Jesus is coming, you know what? Are we talking human days or are we talking God's days? And to sit there and just rattle on and prattle on about that, Billy Graham is a great man and a great American, and he did wonders for this country, bringing people, a lot of them out of addictions and a lot of them out of the darkness and bringing them to God. And to sit there and, these self-appointed yahoos who call in here every now and then and try to say, the rest of you are all wrong. I'm sitting out here in my dark shed all alone and all of my neighbors hate me. And it's all your fault because, of course, you people don't believe what I do. Go pound salt, buddy. 8:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 25. Ken Menzel from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department scheduled to join us in just a few minutes right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX.